Welcome back to RiseWell TV, family. I am your host, and today we are stepping into a story that doesn't just touch the heart, it breaks it down, remolds it, and temp larger than life, yet incredibly close to home. We often look at successful people, at CEOs, at those who built massive empires from the ground up, and we admire the crown they wear. But we rarely look at the scars on the hands that forged that crown. We live in a world where it's easy to feel like the weight on your shoulders is going to crush you. We live in a world where bad luck doesn't just knock on your door. Sometimes it breaks the door down and strips you of everything you have. Today's broadcast is incredibly special. We received a letter from a man named Randy. His story is a testament to what happens when a human being refuses to break, when the universe demands that you fold and instead you look it in the eye and say, "Watch me build." Get comfortable, clear your mind, and let's dive into Randy's reality. This is part one of his journey. Dear RiseWell TV, I am writing this letter to you from an office that overlooks the very city where I once walked with holes in the soles of my shoes. If you told the 16-year-old version of me that one day I would own a company that employs thousands of people, providing livelihood, dignity, and hope to families just like mine, I would have probably looked at you with tired, tear-filled eyes and asked where my next meal was coming from. To understand where I am, you have to understand where we began. My family was never rich, but we were rich in things that money couldn't buy. My mother was a high school teacher. She was the kind of educator who didn't just teach from a textbook, she molded minds. She taught us poetry, she taught us integrity, and above all, she taught us to love one another. My father was a hardworking man, a carpenter by trade, whose hands were rough but whose embrace was the safest place in the world. We were 6 in total, my parents, myself as the eldest, and my 3 younger siblings, Maya, Leo, and little Toby. We lived in a small, rented house on the outskirts of town. The roof leaked when the rains were heavy, and the floorboards creaked under our weight, but it was filled with laughter. We shared what little food we had, and our evenings were spent around a small wooden table, listening to my mother read stories or my father talk about his dreams of building a house that we could truly call our own. Then the dark years arrived. It started with a promise. A man my father trusted, a childhood friend who had made it big in the city, returned with an investment opportunity. He told my father about a real estate development project that was guaranteed to triple any money put into it within a year. My father, blinded by the desire to finally give us a permanent home and secure our future, did the unthinkable. He mortgaged our small piece of land in the province, borrowed heavily from local loan sharks, and emptied every single cent of my mother's hard-earned savings. 3 months later, the friend vanished. The office he operated from was wiped clean. The police told us we were just one of dozens of families who had been cleaned out. The shock broke something inside my father. The proud, strong man who used to carry me on his shoulders looked like an empty shell. The debt collectors began to circle our house like vultures. They would knock violently on our door at odd hours of the night, shouting profanities, demanding money we simply did not have. The stress was toxic, permeating every corner of our home. But tragedy rarely comes alone. Amidst the terror of the debts, my mother fell ill. It started with a persistent cough and chronic fatigue. She kept hiding it, pushing through the pain to continue teaching until one afternoon she collapsed in front of her classroom. The diagnosis was severe, a chronic kidney condition aggravated by extreme stress and malnutrition. The doctors were clear, she had to stop working immediately. If she continued to strain herself, her body would fail completely. Just like that, our world collapsed. My father was paralyzed by depression and shame, unable to face the world. My mother was confined to a mattress on the floor, fighting for her breath. And my siblings, Maya was 12, Leo was 9, and Toby was only 5. As the eldest, at 16 years old, I stood in the middle of our dimly lit living room one evening. The kitchen cupboards were completely bare. Toby was crying because his stomach hurt from hunger. Maya was trying to comfort him, her own eyes wide with a fear that no child should ever know. Leo sat in a corner, clutching his school backpack as if holding onto it would keep his world from spinning out of control. It was in that exact moment of absolute despair that something shifted inside me. The boy died that night, and the man had to be born. The next morning, I made the hardest decision of my life. I sat down with Maya and Leo. I looked into their innocent faces, my heart breaking into a million pieces. "Maya, Leo," I said, my voice trembling but my gaze steady. "For now, we have to pause school. We can't afford the uniform, the books, or the bus fares. I need you to stay home. I need you to take care of Mom and Toby. I promise you, with everything I have in my soul, this is temporary. I will work. I will find a way. I will bring us out of this." Maya wept. Leo didn't say a word. He just nodded, his small fists clenched. They had no choice but to surrender their childhoods to poverty. Seeing them unpack their school bags and place their books on the shelf was a pain that cut deeper than any physical wound. I went to my mother's bedside. She looked so frail, so thin. Tears rolled down her pale cheeks as she took my hand. "I am sorry, Randy," she whispered. "I am so sorry I failed you." "You didn't fail us, Mom," I replied, kissing her forehead. "Now it's my turn to teach. I'm going to take care of us." I dropped out of my regular high school classes and enrolled in a night school program that allowed me to study from 6:00 p.m. to 10:00 p.m., freeing up my entire day to find work. But who hires a 16-year-old boy with no experience and a family crisis hanging over his head? I walked the streets for 3 days straight, entering every shop, every grocery store, every warehouse, begging for a job. I was rejected everywhere. I was too young, too small, or they simply didn't have the budget. On the fourth day, exhausted and starving, I walked into the Golden Platter, a bustling local diner known for its cheap, heavy meals and high volume of customers. The manager, a gruff, middle-aged man named Mr. Henderson, was in the middle of screaming at a dishwasher who had just walked out on him during the lunch rush. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight up to him. "Sir, I will wash those dishes. I will wash them faster and cleaner than anyone you've ever hired. Just give me a chance. I need to feed my family today." Mr. Henderson looked at my desperate eyes, looked at the mountain of greasy plates piling up by the sink, and pointed a heavy finger toward the back. "The apron is on the hook. $5 an hour. If you break a single plate, it comes out of your pay. Get to work." For the next 8 hours, I plunged my hands into scalding hot, greasy water. The soap burned my skin, the steam choked my lungs, and my back ached from bending over the deep stainless steel sink. The grease traps smelled foul, and the endless stream of dirty pans, stained cutlery, and leftover food felt like a physical manifestation of the mountain I had to climb. By the time 5:30 p.m. arrived, my hands were raw, wrinkled, and bleeding from small cuts. But Mr. Henderson handed me a $20 bill and a plastic container filled with leftover rice and chicken stew. I didn't care about the pain. I held that $20 bill like it was a golden ticket. I ran all the way home, bursting through the door, and handed the food and the money to Maya. That night, my siblings ate. That night, there was a brief moment of relief under our roof. But $20 a day wasn't enough to pay off thousands of dollars in debt, nor was it enough to buy my mother's medication. I knew I had to do more. Being just a dishwasher wasn't going to cut it. I had to become indispensable. I started arriving at the diner an hour early without clocking in to sweep the parking lot. When the delivery trucks arrived, I volunteered to unload the heavy crates of potatoes, beef, and canned goods, hauling them on my back into the cold storage walk-in freezer. When the line cooks were overwhelmed, I grabbed a peeler and prepped sacks of onions and carrots until my eyes blinded with tears. I didn't complain. Every time my muscles screamed for me to quit, I pictured Toby's hungry face. I pictured my mother's pale lips. I pictured the debt collectors standing outside our home. Fear is a powerful motivator, but love is an unstoppable force. One night, around 11:30 p.m., after completing my night classes and returning to the diner for the closing cleanup shift, I was wiping down the heavy exhaust hoods above the grills. The diner was empty, except for Mr. Henderson, who was counting the register receipts in his small glass office. He walked out, watched me scrub the stubborn carbon grease from the steel, and stood there for a long time. "Randy," he said, his voice surprisingly soft. "You've been here for 6 months, you do the work of 3 men, and you never complain. Why are you pushing yourself like this? You're going to burn out before you hit 20. I stepped down from the stool, wiped the sweat from my forehead with my sleeve, and looked at him. "Mr. Henderson, my family is starving, my mother is dying, my siblings had to stop school so we could survive. I don't have the luxury of burning out. I don't have the permission to be tired. If I stop moving, my family falls apart." The silence in the diner was heavy. Mr. Henderson looked down at his ledger, then back at me. He didn't offer pity, which I appreciated because pity doesn't pay bills. Instead, he gave me something much better, an opportunity. "Starting tomorrow, you're off the dish pit," he said. "You're the assistant kitchen prep. I'm raising your pay to $8 an hour. And if you keep this work ethic up, I've got some people I can introduce you to. There are other businesses in this area, warehouses, logistics hubs, that are always looking for people who actually know how to work." That night, as I walked home under the dim streetlights, the cold wind biting through my thin jacket, I looked up at the sky. For the first time in months, the crushing weight on my chest felt a fraction lighter. I realized something profound that night. Your current situation is not your final destination. The world doesn't care about your excuses, but it eventually bows to your relentless execution. I had survived the first layer of hell, but little did I know the real test of my spirit was yet to come. The debts were still mounting, my mother's health was a ticking time bomb, and the journey from that greasy kitchen floor to founding an empire was going to require me to break down and rebuild myself more times than I could ever imagine. That is where we pause the first part of Randy's journey. Think about that for a moment. At 16 years old, an age when most kids are worrying about high school video games, their social media presence, or who they're going to the prom with, Randy was standing in a greasy kitchen pit with bleeding hands, carrying the survival of 6 human souls on his teenage back. He had every reason to sit in a corner and curse the world. He had every excuse to turn to a life of crime, to bitterness, or to give up entirely and let the waves of poverty wash over his family. But he didn't. He looked at the chaos, he looked at the lack, and he chose to become the anchor. I want to speak directly to anyone listening to this right now who feels like they are currently trapped in Randy's yesterday. Perhaps you are buried under a mountain of debt you didn't create. Perhaps you are watching someone you love fight an illness and you feel utterly powerless because your pockets are empty. Perhaps you've had to make sacrifices that broke your heart, giving up your education, your dreams, or your comforts just to keep your head above water. Listen to me closely, do not lose heart. Life has a brutal way of testing the human spirit. Sometimes it feels like an endless winter where every corner you turn leads to another storm. It is easy to look around in the middle of that darkness and believe that light no longer exists. It is easy to think that you are buried. But I want you to reframe that thought today. You are not buried, you are planted. There is a divine architecture to hardship. The scalding water that burned Randy's hands was the very thing tempering his spirit. The heavy crates that ached his back were building the shoulders strong enough to carry an entire corporate empire later in life. Every rejection, every tear, every late-night walk under the cold city sky was a foundational stone being laid for his ultimate triumph. Life is a field, and right now you might be in the sowing season. Sowing is painful. It requires you to dig deep into the dirt, to sweat, to bleed, and to pour your energy into the ground without seeing an immediate harvest. You look at the soil and it looks empty. You look at your bank account and it looks empty. You look at your life and it feels barren. But the law of the universe is absolute. You will reap what you sow if you do not give up. If you sow resilience, if you sow integrity, if you sow relentless, unapologetic hard work even when no one is watching, the harvest will come. It might not come tomorrow. It might not come next month. But day by day, plate by plate, step by step, the ground will yield to your efforts. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It is not a myth. It is not a cliché. It is a mathematical certainty for those who refuse to stop walking. The tunnel may be long, it may be suffocatingly dark, and the walls may feel like they are closing in on you. But the only way to guarantee you stay in the dark is to sit down and stop moving. Move forward. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. If your hands are bleeding, find a way to wipe the sweat and keep grinding. Do it for yourself. Do it for the family counting on you. Do it for the future version of you who is waiting at the end of that tunnel, ready to look back at this exact moment and say, thank you for not quitting. Keep rising, keep striving, and remember, your current struggle is just the setup for an unforgettable comeback. Stay tuned for part 2 of Randy's story, where we see how the dishwasher began to build his army. Until next time, this is RiseWell TV. Keep your head up, your heart strong, and keep moving all the way to the end.